everyone. Good morning and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. We were all up late watching a very interesting game last night. But we have big NFL games to preview. But why not start with the most
Alabama's
dominant
perfect
team?
season. I'm sorry.
There it is. That's the perfect season right there. We're going to start with the most dominant team in college football. And guess what? It's not Alabama. National title game between Clemson and the Tide, and it was Clemson who owned the night. Tigers beat the Crimson Tide 44-16 behind nearly 350 yards passing from superstar in the making Trevor Lawrence. The last time Nick Saban lost by more than 2 scores, he was the coach of the Miami Dolphins. Just to put this in time to perspective, it is Clemson's second national title in 3 years and the first 15-0 season in modern college football history. Clemson Tigers are your national champions. Here's the head coach, Dabo Swinney, after the win.
There was a lot of talk about best ever all year long. We were never in that conversation. But tonight, there's no doubt. You know, first 15-0 team to beat Notre Dame and to beat Alabama to do it. This team won 13 games by 20 points or more and led by an unbelievable group of seniors.
That's just been amazing. The focus and how driven this team has been unbelievable. And just these seniors have just taken me in, and they kind of dragged me along, and until I got my feet under me. And they're awesome people as well as players. So
one game doesn't define who you are, but I also told the players that sometimes we learn more when things don't go well, when we lose. You have to learn how to lose as well as how you win. And there's a lot of lessons for us to learn from the experience that we had in this game.
We were killing ourselves. We shot ourselves in the foot, by me throwing that interception for a touchdown and then, not finishing drives the way we wanted to. All
right, guys, we spent all day yesterday asking ourselves, well, if Clemson was going to do it, how would they pull off the upset? So how shocking was this upset?
Well, I wasn't shocked at all. I thought this was the best Clemson team after watching college football. And it's great, too, because we thought in this being the 4th time they would meet, man, it's become a little redundant. Man, I'm tired of seeing it. Hey, this is college football. It's Clemson, it's Alabama. The rest of the teams have to step up to that because they're the only 2 that I see on that plateau. What I saw in Dabo Swinney was, for the first time, he's got a pure pocket passer quarterback. The first time he's had that since he's been there. So I think that's one thing that's brought them closer to Alabama. Their offensive line, which no one talked about, which is led by a bunch of veteran players, the guys that have played a lot of games, they were able to match up with Alabama's front 7 better than any other Clemson team. So I thought they would have success. How would the wide receiving core do against that secondary? That was the variable that we didn't know about. How would the freshman quarterback do under the national stage? As everyone saw for the first time on the national stage, he is a big-time player. So Dabo Swinney has this program exactly where he thought, on the same footing as Alabama, and it should be in the conversation based on a few things. One, Dabo Swinney said it in the press conference. 13 of the 15 wins by a decisive 20 points or more. That in college football is astronomical and should be noted. And, man, these players coming back after the embarrassment of last year, saying, man, we want a piece of Alabama, and them staying together as a group. It's very rare to see that in college football, and for them to get paid out with the national championship. It was outstanding. Outstanding season. Congratulations to the Clemson Tigers for being national champs.
I don't think anyone should be shocked that Clemson won the title. They were a smaller underdog than the Philadelphia Eagles were this week. And I don't think people were shocked Philadelphia won that weekend. I was shocked by the margin. I was shocked that Alabama got bageled in the second half, that Clemson was able to take that early momentum. This game was 14-13 at one point. And how did it end? 44-16. So you go on a 30-3 run on Alabama. The ability to do that did shock me, even if maybe that's because I was underselling Clemson, because every game they played this year, that young man started at quarterback and finished the game at quarterback, they won by at least 20 points. They had 2 games that were close. One was the A&M game early when Kelly Bryant was still the quarterback.
Yep.
And the other game was against my alma mater, Syracuse, when they got down to their 3rd-string quarterback due to an injury to Trevor Lawrence. And so maybe we should have been giving Clemson more credit. And what Dabo said was, there's talked about all the greatest ever, and we were never included. You know what it reminded me of? The 2005 run-up to the Texas-USC Rose Bowl, when everyone basically had anointed USC. Obviously, they're going to beat Texas. And we were doing a bracket of USC versus the all-time greatest schools or teams in college football history. And then they lost that game. Now, they lost it very close in one of the greatest college football games ever. But it seemed like Clemson, who they looked at themselves and were like, hold up. On the year, we're averaging 31 a game. You're averaging 31 a game. We're averaging 530 yards per game. You're averaging 530 yards per game. We have the same record as you. Like, why is it not being discussed that there are 2 teams better than everyone rather than 1 team better than everyone? Turns out there was 1 team better than everyone. But it was Clemson, not Alabama.
Let's talk about Trevor Lawrence for a second. Was his style just something that Alabama hadn't been prepared for, hadn't faced all season? Why was he able to be so successful against this team?
No, with the SEC is the best conference in college football. But as far as facing top-flight drop-back quarterbacks, right now they don't have those quarterbacks in the SEC. So this was the first time that this Alabama team faced a quarterback like him. And since there's a type of quarterbacks that have been successful against Nick Saban defenses at Alabama, it's been a dual-threat quarterback. So people can say, oh, no drop-back quarterback has ever beat him. This kid's a special player. He could be a dual threat. He's good enough. You could see at the end of the game when they were trying to run out the clock, they kept running him. So he has that athletic ability, but it's special. He's special throwing the football. And going against that secondary, one of the reasons why we didn't predict that Alabama would be like this, because we didn't know what their secondary would be like. All right. One, we didn't know Trevor Lawrence under the pressure. What would he be like? But this secondary, they lost their top 6 players from last year. They developed a secondary, and no quarterback could get after them during the regular season. We were able to see in this game, they were able to protect with that great offensive line, and a young quarterback sat in there and made some unbelievable throws and catches. Man, the wide receivers for Clemson, they played like they were pro wide receivers in last night's game.
And Alabama, whether it was Nick Saban deciding very early in the game, this is a 4th down game, which I understood. The fake field goal struck a lot of people as odd when the game was still in the balance. And Tua, we talked at halftime, what did you say is Tua's #1 attribute? His #1 skill that people like about him?
For people who don't know him, it's his leadership in knowing football, knowing where people were going to be at. So seeing him surprised a couple times by the blitz.
Surprised by the blitz, and on the second interception, the thing that he's been great at is knowing where he threw that ball before the receiver was basically en route and without knowing where the defense was going to be. But he's been doing that all year. He was just wrong on what he saw, and that's, I guess, a credit to Brent Venables and the Clemson coordinator, the Clemson staff, I should say, for putting together that game plan. But you also saw, this is, I felt, one of the only downsides to blowing people out throughout the year until that game against Georgia, where you don't have a ton of experience of things aren't going well for us. Now, Tua has the experience of last year's national championship game, but in that game, he was almost playing, to use a cliche, house money. You come in, you're a true freshman. It's not your team. You're asked to bring your team back from 13 down at halftime. This is different. You are the favorite. They are talking about you as a guy that could have won the Heisman this year, should win it next year, greatest team ever, and things aren't going well. And Clemson seized on that. And Clemson, even without one of their best defensive linemen, that defensive front that has pros up and down it, they made their impact on the game. And you talked about their offensive line, which is something I didn't hear many people talking about. Their offensive line kept Trevor Lawrence upright and comfortable throughout the entire football game.
Tell me the last game Nick Saban and he coached that they didn't have a sack or a turnover.
It's unbelievable.
You'd be hard-pressed to be able to try to find. So up front, being able to match Alabama, they negated that great defensive front that they have and their ability to be able to run the ball just enough against Alabama to set up that lethal passing.
We're going to talk a lot more about this game and what this means for Clemson in the grand scope of college football coming up in a little bit. But on the other side, what does Sean McVay think of Ezekiel Elliott? You'll hear it next on First Things First. Stay with us.
Hey, it's Nick Wright, and we all put off doing things we know we need to do. We know we need to organize the garage, but something always gets in the way. Funny how home security can be just like that. You know it's a good idea, but there's always something holding you back. Well, now is the time to act, because Simply Safe Home Security's extended holiday sale ends soon. Simply Safe believes nothing should come between you and protecting your home. So they've gotten rid of the reasons not to get home security. There's no contract ever, no price markups from any middleman, no installation windows. Who's got time for that? Most importantly, their system is engineered to do one thing brilliantly, and that thing is protect. So if a storm takes out your power, Simply Safe is ready. If an intruder cuts your phone line, Simply Safe is ready. If they destroy your keypad or siren, Simply Safe will still get you the help you need. Go to simplysafe.com/FTF. And listen here, order before January 8th is over to save with their extended holiday sale. That's simplysafe.com/FTF. simplysafe.com/FTF. Yeah.
Back to the NFL now. The Rams enjoyed their bye last week, waiting to see who they'd host in the division round this weekend. Turns out it'll be a hot Cowboys team led by a quarterback in Dak Prescott with a ton of confidence right now, and a running back in Ezekiel Elliott who's been great all season. In fact, this game could very well come down to a battle of the two best running backs in the NFL, with Zeke and Todd Gurley. And head coach Sean McVay says the two have a lot in common.
When you look at Zeke, I think he's, similar to Todd, one of the most complete backs in the league, extremely productive. I think he's got the ability to go through you or go around you with speed. He's gotten a lot more involved in the pass game this year. I think he's truly a complete back, and you could see that, a lot of what they do is predicated on, just him getting a bunch of touches.
It's interesting. We've seen this season that both of these young third-year quarterbacks, oftentimes their game goes as their running backs seem to go. How much differently are Zeke and Gurley, CC, used by their respective teams?
Man, they're used. They are the focal point of that offense, but just used in a variety of different ways. Zeke is the traditional tailback. This year, having more productivity as a receiver out of the backfield, so having his best year as a receiver, as a complete running back. Coming out of college, didn't know that at Ohio State because they didn't throw the ball to him. And, they ran a veer-type system with the quarterback in the shotgun, but he is the most dominant running back between the tackles. I believe he's the best pure runner of the football. And he, because of carries and volume, you have to put a number of people in the box. So he's going to force you to commit 7 guys to that line of scrimmage, which opens up coverage on the outside. On the other side, Sean McVay, what they like to do, a lot of motion, a lot of things, but at the end of the day, they want to run the ball between the tackles with Todd Gurley. But a lot of it is window dressing just to make things to set up their passing game. So Todd Gurley, just through the way they run their running game, setting up their play action. Ezekiel Elliott, because they're going to run him 20 times, and then when he touches it 20 times, they're unstoppable. They set up the passing game different ways, but both of them utilize very, very successful for these offenses.
The Rams and Sean McVay are the way they use Todd Gurley. It's almost like a good magician, like trying to make you look at a bunch of different places as opposed to where you should be looking. They do so much of that window dressing just to get the defense's attention briefly off the best player on the field, which is Todd Gurley, and they want to get him the ball. Both of these teams have this in common. This year, the Cowboys, when Zeke has 20 or more carries, they're 7-0. Over the last 2 years, the Rams, when Gurley has 20 or more touches, they're 17-1. So the reason it's carries versus touches is because Gurley is more of a guy that will catch more passes out of the backfield, at least in his career up until this season before Zeke added that to his game. These are your two best backs in football. It's a matter of taste. Do you prefer a guy that is more traditional in the sense of, I'll say Earl Campbell almost, and a guy that's just going to, you're going to I formation, hand it to him, Adrian Peterson, and maybe a better contemporary
because
example.
of the speed.
Because of the speed and the ability, not going to catch a lot of passes, and Zeke's done better at that this year, but you know what he's going to do. Or in a guy like Todd Gurley, who is, to me, more of a modern-day, almost Marshall Faulk, which is he can beat you a bunch of different ways. Not quite the receiver Faulk was, but really dynamic and a great athlete. Both of these guys have to have a great game on Sunday or Saturday night, pardon me, for their team to have the best chance to win. For the Cowboys, it's to have any chance to win.
I was just going to say the Rams can take more chances if Gurley either isn't getting as many touches or isn't finding as much success. The Cowboys need Zeke to play well. They need him to help set up Dak, right, for what he's going to do. I guess you could say the Rams have more. Would you say they have more weapons on offense?
They have more weapons, but I have to disagree with you just a little bit. Todd Gurley, if he doesn't have a big day in the Coliseum, they will lose. Now, he's going against a better run defense, and I expect them to be able to hold his numbers down. But Todd Gurley, man, if he's not touching the ball 22 times in this game, no, they don't have the guys. Yeah, Foster's a nice receiver. Cook's a good receiver, but they're not going to dominate the game. They're not going to take over the game, and they have missed Cooper Kupp in that slot. Their overall productivity, if you take away those 48 points they scored in week number 17, man, they're getting around 3 touchdowns in those 3 or 4 games leading up to that. So this Rams team that we saw late in the season, it was not the Rams team that we saw the first 2 months of the season.
And to me, the most interesting part of this football game is going to be for the national audience to see, is this Rams defense actually good? This offseason, when you think about the big acquisitions they made, yes, they traded for Brandon Cooks. But their big acquisitions were on defense. They brought in Aqib Talib. They brought in Marcus Peters. They brought in Ndamukong Suh. They retain Aaron Donald on a huge deal. They trade midseason for Dante Fowler. They have the personnel to be better than they've been defensively. Now, I know some people, I like Wade Phillips a lot, and I know Wade Phillips very well, their defensive coordinator. His history says his defense is in year 1 pop, in year 2 regress a bit, and then recover in year 3. We're in year 2, but this is a critical year 2. This team was one and done in the postseason last year. Didn't have to be. They end up they're at home now. They're off a bye. I'm confident that the offense is going to be at least okay against this Cowboys defense, as good as the Cowboys defense is, because I think they have enough different ways to put points up on the board. Even when they were slowed, they were still scoring average of 20 points a game going into week 17. I want to see if this defense gets gashed by Zeke, because all year long they have struggled stopping the run, despite having Donald and Suh up the middle, which would make you think you shouldn't struggle stopping the run. Maybe struggle edge pass rush, but I never thought this team would be awful against the run up the middle.
Yeah, another thing I want fans to watch and listen for in the telecast in the game is listen for the crowd noise, because I believe that Dallas will have at least equal footing in the Coliseum. A lot of Cowboys fans in Southern California. The fan base in L.A. is growing for football with the Chargers and the Rams. They should be as excited about football like no other time. Watch for the crowd noise. So if they get that running game going of the Cowboys, Zeke gets to eating, those fans, just what I have never seen a team with a number 2 seed that did not have home field advantage playing at home.
Yeah.
And I believe that's going to be an intriguing storyline to this game this weekend.
I want to throw one curveball question at you. I didn't ask you about this before the show.
Yeah, no problem. I can hit the curve.
Okay, assuming good weather, which is a good assumption in Southern California, and the weather report says good weather, does that favor one team or the other, one quarterback or the other? Is that about a neutral situation?
No, it's neutral. As far as these offenses, the way they're running, yes. I would consider that to be not a factor in this game.
All right, let's take a break.
That wasn't a curveball. That was a straight fastball.
No problem.
Coming up, four-seamer. Could Dwayne Haskins go number 1 overall? That's next on First Things First. On Sunday night, tune in to FS1 for a big super middleweight title fight as Jose Uzcategui defends his belt against undefeated Caleb Plant. It's live Sunday at 6:30 Eastern on FS1 and the Fox Sports app. All right, time for stories to start your morning. Well, basketball, Lakers snapped their 3-game losing streak last night, beating the Mavericks 107-97. Brandon Ingram led the way with 29 points. Nick, what was your takeaway from this one?
Excellent second half by the Lakers in a game they needed. After struggling immensely without LeBron, looked like this was going to be a continuation of that trend. Down 15 at the half. Josh Hart hit a nice little buzzer beater right at the half, gave him a little momentum. And Brandon Ingram, second most points he scored in an NBA game at 29. He hadn't been able to crack that 26-point threshold all year. Good game by him. Good game by Lonzo, despite Kuz struggling immensely in his game back.
Yeah, they're in the 8th spot in the West now. Man, it's critical that they try to just hold serve until LeBron gets back. But it's a dangerous time for them, man. They need to win a few games with LeBron being out of the lineup.
When's he
Big
coming
win
back,
last
Nick?
night.
I don't know. They're
That's
playing
a pretty
home
severe,
against the Cavs, in 6 days. I don't know.
Wish y'all listened to me about those injuries. LeBron said it popped. Man, this is not significant. Oh, you'll be back in a few days. Shh. Okay.
Excuse me. All right, let's move on to Jimmy Butler. The saga continues. Reports are he isn't happy with his role with the Sixers. This after not being happy with his role with the Timberwolves. But Philly's not given up on him quite yet. According to more reports, the Sixers have refused calls from teams looking to acquire Butler. Nick, what'd you make of this?
Jimmy Butler needs to talk with somebody, get with somebody. I don't know if it's a life coach or just personality conflict coach. Jimmy Butler, what does Stink say? When everywhere you walk smells, maybe it's you. Like, Jimmy Butler, you had beef with people in Chicago. You had beef with people in Minnesota. You're now having beef already in Philadelphia. Maybe it's a Jimmy Butler problem. He carries himself like he's bringing this championship pedigree to any team he goes to. He's won 2 series, not championship series, in his career. Like, come on, Jimmy, chill out, man.
Well, I don't have a problem with this, and the reason why, because they do have an offensive problem. And it's a legitimate question. Now, how he presented that, and now because he's done these things in Minnesota, but they got an offensive problem. So he's got a high basketball IQ. And high basketball IQ guys, they will challenge the coaches. I didn't have a problem with him challenging, but he needs to be. You have to play with somebody, Jimmy. It's a team sport. All right? So they do need to get their offensive problems worked out. So that is legitimate.
All right, let's move back to the football now. In the NFL, the Packers are reportedly hiring Titans offensive coordinator Matt LaFleur to be their head coach. LaFleur spent time with Sean McVay in L.A. before this past role in Tennessee. Cris, what'd you make of this hire?
I thought it was a good hire. And Matt LaFleur is one of those kind of guys, when you meet him 15 minutes, you think ultimately he's going to be calling the NFL offense, running some type of franchise. So I'm thinking, now they might have reached a little bit early for him, because he doesn't have the experience there in Tennessee. You're not going to see his skill set based on what they did in Tennessee. He will adapt. It will be more like Sean McVay and what they do with Los Angeles, but I believe a bright, young offensive mind who will challenge Aaron Rodgers. So I like the hire of the Packers, and I like the fact that they got out there fast and was able to get one of the better candidates immediately.
Yeah, one of the only benefits of firing a coach mid-season is theoretically you get a jump start on this process. Packers took advantage of that. So people should know he was the quarterback's coach in Atlanta the year Matt Ryan won MVP and they went to the Super Bowl. He was with the Rams last season but wasn't calling plays. He was hired based on, I would imagine, his interview and the ideas he presented rather than the resume of what the Titans did this year offensively, because what the Titans did this year offensively was not impressive, but he didn't really have the quarterback situation or the receivers to be impressive. It's a risky hire by Green Bay to hire a first-time head coach for this last phase of Aaron Rodgers' career, but they took the risk.
And this is where NFL owners are going. Sean McVay didn't have the resume either. No. When he went to Washington, you're like, hey, what offense is he going to run? And then when he got to L.A., we saw a different offense. So that's what the Packers are hoping for.
All right, let's move on. To declare or not to declare, that is the question if you're Dwayne Haskins. And it turns out the Ohio State quarterback who led the Buckeyes to a Rose Bowl win and a 13-1 record this season will declare. He'll enter the 2019 NFL Draft. Haskins is the presumptive favorite to be the first quarterback taken in the draft. Could be the first Big Ten quarterback selected in the first round since 1995. CC, how good can Haskins be?
Well, he's the best quarterback that's ever come from that institution. They've been playing football over 120 years. He's absolute by far the best thrower. People might have missed the season. 50 touchdown passes. Now, I don't like the fact only starting 14 or 15 games, because typically we have seen quarterbacks be more successful in the pros. But given his situation, given that he can be a top 10, given that he is the first at his position, he's got to be able to come out of school, even though he doesn't have those 30 starts, 25 starts that we would like. He has a touch, has a big-time arm, is a competitor, is a great leader, is not a diva, not a high-maintenance guy. So if you want to have a young guy be the face of your franchise for a number of years. I believe he's as good a prospect as we've seen come into the league in the last several years. So what he did at Ohio State and revamped that offense with Ryan Day, we hadn't seen that. Art Schlichter, 1982, last quarterback from Ohio State. You mentioned the Big Ten quarterbacks. That is just not a conference that produces a lot of NFL. I believe that Haskins is the brightest that we've seen in a long time.
That is a crazy stat. That no Big Ten quarterbacks been taken in the first round since Kerry Collins in '95. I think people hear, they're like, what about Drew Brees? Drew Brees was the very top of the second round when he was taken by then the San Diego Chargers. But I'm pretty close with a prominent Ohio State alum who I might have gone to a game with last year, who even last year was talking about this kid, Dwayne Haskins. Even when they had four-year captain starting quarterback at the time, the name's escaping me, I forgot. The quarterback.
J.T. Barrett.
J.T. Barrett, thank you, apologies. Being told and people talking that when this kid gets on the field, he is going to change the way Ohio State traditionally plays football because of his ability to vertically pass the football.
Somewhat the situation Trevor Lawrence in Clemson.
Yes.
They were trying to take that offense to a different level, pure drop back, big-time thrower. That's what Clemson had. That's what Ohio State had in Haskins.
And so the only knock on him is experience. And so he could have come back for another year. You come back for another year, then you're maybe not the number one quarterback in your class. There's a lot of questions that come up. He had said about a month ago in an interview, because he's from the tri-state area, New Jersey, I think, that he would love to be taken by the Giants. Now, it was kind of a leading question. The Giants are the type of situation that could be ideal for him because of the lack of experience, where it's not a team that wants him to start immediately, where he can learn from a veteran quarterback and then take the reins either midseason or in year two. Because I believe in the talent. I do think it's very difficult for quarterbacks that only start the 1 year in college to come in and instantly make an impact. Mitch Trubisky was in a similar position.
Sure.
He's still getting his footing, and he's played a couple years of pro football at this point.
And you think his game translates to the pros pretty well?
Oh, he can throw it. He can throw it to any part of the field. He's got touch on the short passes. Intermediate we saw during the season. And being able to read coverages and not throw interceptions. He's got a big arm, but he doesn't take a lot of chances with the football. Still throwing in single digits as far as interceptions with those 50 touchdowns. Pretty special. I believe he's going to be a really good pro.
All right, let's move back to last night's game again. Yesterday we wondered what it would take for Clemson to pull off the upset over Alabama. The answer was Trevor Lawrence. Oh, and a great all-around Tigers team. They beat the Crimson Tide 44-16 behind nearly 350 passing yards out of Trevor Lawrence. It is Clemson's second national title in 3 years, the first 15-0 season in modern college football history. Clemson Tigers are your national champs. Here's Clemson's head coach, Dabo Swinney, after the win.
There was a lot of talk about best ever all year long. We were never in that conversation. But tonight, there's no doubt. You know, first 15-0 team to beat Notre Dame and to beat Alabama to do it. This team won 13 games by 20 points or more and led by an unbelievable group of seniors.
One game doesn't define who you are. But I also told the players that sometimes we learn more when things don't go well, when we lose. You have to learn how to lose as well as how you win. And there's a lot of lessons for us to learn from the experience that we had in this game, whether you're a senior who's leaving or whether you're a player who's coming back and you see that we have work to do.
All right, Nick, when you look at what Clemson did not only this year, but what has been doing the last couple of years, can you now put these two programs on equal footing?
I think you have to in the right here and now. Over the last 4 years, they're both 55-4. They're both 2 times champions. They're both in the playoff every single year. They're 2-2 against each other. And I think more importantly than what I think, what the young athletes think, what the high school players think, that Clemson has on their rosters, freshmen this year. The number one player from Ohio, got a pretty damn good football school in Ohio. They got the number one player from Alabama. They got a pretty good football school in Alabama. And what Dabo Swinney has done is, to me, the only thing I can compare it to is what Coach K did at Duke when he took over a team that was not a blue blood, that was not one of these all-time great programs, and turned it into one. If at the beginning of this decade, when Nick Saban had already won a title in Alabama and was setting up this infrastructure, if you'd have come to me or I think anyone and said, hey, there's going to be one team that by the end of the decade is toe-and-toe, neck-and-neck with Alabama year in, year out, people might have said SC, they might have said Oklahoma, they might have said Ohio State, they might have said Texas, might have said Florida.
Not Clemson.
Clemson wouldn't have been one of the first 15. Clemson, yeah, they won a national title in '81. They before this run, they had the same history of 25 other college football programs in a place that hasn't been historically a hotbed to recruit from for them. They're competing with SEC schools. Like, what he has done there is remarkable. It has created a new powerhouse program in college football out of nearly thin air. So right now, contemporaneously, they and Alabama are clearly neck and neck. And what he is doing in remaking what Clemson football is, to me, is nothing short of remarkable.
Yeah, there's a lot of good programs in college football, but right now, the creme de la creme happens to be Clemson and Alabama. And last week, in talking with Ryan Day, and in the last couple of days, because we got a lot of kids, they're going to come out of school, and I've been just conversating with the coach. He's recruiting Ohio, and he's recruiting the nation, but it's with Clemson and Alabama in mind. He's saying, yeah, I need kids. I want kids from Ohio. Yeah, I want kids from around the nation. Yes. But if these kids can't help me beat Clemson and Alabama, that's the standard in college football. And with Ohio State having one of the top 5 programs, one of their coaches telling me, yes, I think everyone else in college football should recognize Clemson and Alabama. They are a step above Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, and Michigan. And these other schools are going to have to, from a quarterback standpoint, be able to protect that quarterback and getting after the quarterback. You're going to have to be able to match what these teams have been able to do. And what I think is more important, especially with the retirement of Urban Meyer, there's only one coach on the level of Nick Saban, and that's Dabo Swinney. All the other, there is no other. There are no legendary coaches in college football. Dabo Swinney and Nick Saban are the only two on that level. Everyone else is aspiring to get to that level. So not only from a coaching standpoint, because that helps recruiting.
Sure.
All right? Because you can go in there and say, yeah, man, we stood eye to eye with the Beast 4 times in the last several years, and we whooped them twice. That right there is the best stat that Clemson has going for them.
And the other schools we've seen go on a 4 or 5 year run, they either had historical or infrastructure recruiting advantages. We saw what Urban did at Florida, that unbelievable run. But it shouldn't have been shocking to anyone that you get an all-time great head coach in a place like the University of Florida, that he can build a juggernaut. We've seen what the University of Miami has done multiple times over the last 30 years, what SC did under Pete Carroll. All of those made sense to me. Like what Oklahoma, I know they only won the 1 title with Stoops, but what they were able to do in, year out, being a top 5 team, Florida State with Bowden, like all those things made sense. For the reason I brought up the Coach K example is for a guy to take over a smart kid school in Chapel Hill backyard, North Carolina's backyard, and then all of a sudden make them the premier program in college basketball. How does that happen? Clemson, to do what he's done in the SEC's backyard, in a school that had always been a second-tier football school compared to the top teams, is remarkable to me.
How did he do it? What can you pinpoint and say, well, this is where it really changed, or this is where it really happened, or this is where the school really made the turn?
Yeah, Clemson's had a lot of good players for a long, long time, and they've been in the ACC. That's been dominated by Florida State. But when you look at what's been happening from a population standpoint in the United States, a lot of people are moving south. A lot of the factories and stuff closed down. Yep. So Pennsylvania, Ohio, and all the population, it's been affected. There's less human bodies in the north than in the south. So people have populated to the south, and University of South Carolina have not taken advantage of that being a hotbed. South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, within a 600-mile radius, there is a bunch of good football players. So Clemson was very, very close. Dabo Swinney. Dabo is a special personality, a great leader, and now they've been able to get the quarterback, the prototype. They had Deshaun Watson, and now they have Lawrence. So when you can do those types of things, stack recruiting class on recruiting class, and he's got really, really good big people. Great offensive line and depth on the defensive line that stood together for 4 or 5 years.
What Alabama was known to be able to do, recruiting class on recruiting class.
Oh, absolutely. Like, that is, you want to know who's going to be in the top 10 in college football.
College football is about recruiting.
Yeah, look, you want to know who's going to be in the 2019 top 10? Go look at the 2015 Rivals recruiting rankings. Like, you want to know and look at the top 10 there. That is, those things, it is all about getting the players, but then it's also about developing the players, and that's where the university gets credit. they've given the other advantage Saban has always had is, or I shouldn't say always had, but has had recently is you have the ability to pay coordinators like coaches, head coaches at some places, position coaches like coordinators. What'd you say Brent Venables makes?
Oh, over $2 million as a defensive coordinator. So now they have the resources.
Yeah.
They have the facilities. There's nothing you can use against them negatively as far as recruiting. Man, Clemson is here to stay. And Dabo Swinney, that you don't have to worry about recruiting against him because, he's going to go to his alma mater. He played at Alabama, but he's at home in Clemson, so he's going to be there for a long, long time.
It's his dream job. It's at least it's turned into his dream job. There is not a job you could offer Dabo Swinney that he would say, I want to leave Clemson.
No,
for.
Not because it's 2 national championships that come against beating Alabama.
Right. So he has made them into to win the game the way they want it, because the first 2 games were coin flip games. Either team could have won it, but they could have lost them both. Last year they got beat soundly. To whoop Alabama the way they did last night was as impressive a performance I've seen in college football in a very long time.
Guys.
Yeah.
This with you two, my dream job.
Oh, thank you, Jenna Wolfe. We don't have to worry about her going anywhere, see?
I'm over here, see? Right over here. Just like 3 degrees this way. Got to take a break. Awesome. That went well. Coming up, how can the Eagles...
tell the truth, stop lying on TV.
I am not lying on TV. I did indeed. How did the Eagles pull up the upset in the Superdome? Malcolm Jenkins has the answer ahead on First Things First. Back here, First Things First, look who's here. Former Pro Bowl cornerback Brandon Flowers, who CC called great guy and very handsome. So now you can say instead of me.
Since he was a kid.
This is one of the frustrating things about working with Cris Carter. It's a good thing, but it's frustrating. I saw we were having B-Flow on the show. I come into the morning meeting, I'm all excited. I'm like, man, I've known Brandon for 12 years. Known him since he was a rookie in Kansas City. Him and B. Carr, the whole. And Cris like, man, I used to babysit him. I knew him when he was 14 years old. Trained
I won some money in high school.
I grew up in a game under Cris. He taught us how to be sharp, approach the game a certain way. So yeah,
we got our hair cut the same spot for the same time.
Exactly.
I mean, but this is the thing though. When we came to Fox, it was like, hey, Nick, you want a radio show? He'd be like, yeah, I'm excited radio show. It'd be like, hey, you got Cris Carter. You want a TV show? So that's how things happen.
Again, I'm not complaining.
He's complaining.
Just living the life. I ain't complaining.
We are happy to have you, Brandon. Sit back, relax. Let's talk some football. All right, here we go, Brandon. 2 of the best quarterbacks of our generation will match wits this weekend when Phillip Rivers and the Chargers head into Foxborough to take on Tom Brady and the Patriots. It'll be the first time the two have faced off in the playoffs in over a decade. Brady called this game the most important 3 hours of the season, and he's right for him. Rivers says while he is looking forward to the matchup, he knows he has to be focused on much more.
I got to focus on that defense. No, I'm not playing Tom by any means. But is it special to go to New England against a Hall of Fame coach and arguably the best quarterback ever to play and get another shot at him? Heck yeah. Heck yeah, it is. It is special. And, just like I always told you, look over and it's Peyton Manning, on the other side. I'm not playing those guys, but I have a great deal of respect, fan of those guys, and so to get an opportunity again to go against them 11 years after we had that opportunity in, the 2007 season, it's awesome and looking forward to it.
Already talks like a coach. All right, Brandon, if the Chargers are going to go into New England and pull off the upset, how are they going to do it? What's going to be the key to this game?
The key to the game is hitting Brady. This team gets pressure with Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram. They throw so many different looks at you, like the Ravens last week. 7 DBs. You don't know where the blitz is coming from. And let's be clear, the Chargers are the best team coming in here, and they know it. They can play defense, they can run the football, and they got a quarterback that's been there before.
So you're saying if you roster the roster, man, the Chargers, you like their roster talent more so than New England?
I love the Chargers roster. They have the top 2 rosters in the NFL, in my opinion. They can match up on the outsides with anybody. Gus Bradley is a great defensive coordinator. And who do you want besides Phillip Rivers to go in there in a shootout with Tom Brady? I think they built to beat the New England Patriots.
Man, a couple things. Gus Bradley made the huge adjustment last week. He had a couple safeties in the box, played 7 DBs. Going into Gillette this week, would you come up with that game plan and something else, or how would you attack them?
You have to come in with the same game plan because you can blitz out of 7 DBs on the field, and Tom Brady won't know where it's coming from. Tom Brady loves to hit the running backs out of the backfield. You don't want linebackers matched up against these guys. You want safeties that can run and tackle in space.
So even though we played 58 snaps with these DBs, you're going to present that to Brady. I know you're going to have a plan B, but you're saying let's start the game with the same DBs that we had success with the Ravens.
You have to. You can't let Tom Brady get going and then try to adjust. Have these DBs on the field. These DBs are hungry. We wanted to do this when I was playing at San Diego. I'm glad Gus Bradley has trusted Ron Midas, the DB coach, to put these guys on the field and let them just go out and play and have fun.
And I want people to understand how unprecedented what the Chargers did this past weekend was. I was listening to Robert Mays yesterday on his podcast, and he brought up the exact numbers. So they played 58 of 59 snaps with 7 defensive backs. We said that on the show yesterday. What I didn't know was across the entire NFL this season, all 256 games of the regular season, no team had played more than 18 snaps with 7 defensive backs in a game. So this was talking about something no one was prepared for. Nobody had played more than a quarter of a game in this personnel. They played the entire game. That can't work unless you have elite safety play. They have a first-team All-Pro, Derwin James. Adrian Phillips played out of his mind. You happen to be blessed in playing in some secondaries with some outstanding safeties. As a corner, what does having a safety that can do a little bit of everything, play a little linebacker even when he's playing safety, what does it allow for you to do, and what versatility does it allow for the defense?
You can run so many different coverages because you have safeties on this team that can cover, they can blitz, but get to the quarterback, not just sending a body. Derwin James, when he blitzes, he gets home every time. Adrian Phillips, he's a ball hawk. You know, he's either stripping the ball, he's getting interception. If you blitz Desmond King out of the nickel, he gets home every time.
He's got great speed.
Yeah. So it's just so much these guys can do and do well. You just don't do it. They get home when you send them on blitzes.
Brendan, I know you said roster to roster, you like this Chargers team, but this is a Chargers team. Philip Rivers hasn't beaten Tom Brady yet in his career. They're going into Gillette, where the Patriots have been fantastic at home this year. They haven't lost a game at home.
They're only undefeated.
Is there something about that lure, if you will, that can be intimidating to, I would say, a young team or, younger guys on the team, but just the team as a whole when you're the visiting team?
I think the fact that Phillip Rivers haven't won there is why he will get the win. He's a revenge type of guy. You can see the fire in his eyes. In his interviews, he can't wait to step on that field. I know all during practice, he's just twitching to get in that stadium and get the job done. He's going to go in there relentless. I can't wait to see it.
Give us a little insight, because I know you signed there as a free agent. He didn't know you, but I know you're a guy. You like to talk. You're very, very competitive. What were the practices like, and what was Phillip Rivers? Because I know some of his sound bites of him talking trash in the game, they're one of a kind. He says a lot, but he never uses profanity. So what is it like going against a veteran quarterback like him?
You know how you hear some players that they practice like they playing the game? This guy does it to the T. I'm talking about talking in practice, calling out blitzes. He can look at the defensive line and just let you know what blitz is coming. He'll shout to the defensive coordinator, I know what blitz you in, and he'll strike a pass to light it up. So I can't wait to see this guy go on the field. With him fired the way he is, with Tom Brady, how fired this guy is, it's going to be fireworks out there.
And he mentioned the last time they got a chance to play the Pats in a game like this. It's 2007. How long ago was that? Since then, you have been drafted, played, retired, gotten into television. Since Phillip Rivers last had a chance. Like, I thought you said it in passing, Jenna. I think it's really noteworthy. Phillip Rivers played Tom Brady 7 times in his career. 0-7. And they've had some good teams now. They've had LaDainian Tomlinson. They've had a couple teams that were the 1 or the 2 seed. Has never been able to beat the Pats. For Phillip Rivers, the only thing missing from his resume is a Super Bowl appearance, Super Bowl championship. The numbers, the reason that when we talk about that draft class, he very often is the third name mentioned is because Big Ben's got the stats and the rings. Eli's got the rings against Tom Brady twice. Phillip Rivers just has the regular season success. Has one deep playoff run to the AFC Championship game. They play with torn ACL. It's not an exaggeration to say this is the biggest game Phillip Rivers played in over a decade. This is the second biggest game he's played in his entire career. And I agree with you on the talent. I think the Patriots were rooting so hard for the Texans. They wanted the Texans. They wanted Bill O'Brien. Exactly. They did not want to have to face either that Ravens defense or this Chargers well-rounded team. And I'm curious to see that the story was what the DBs did in that game. But what the DBs did doesn't work if those D linemen aren't dominating the Ravens front. Melvin Ingram, Joey Bosa, those guys.
Yeah, I expect the defensive front to be able to get after it, but I'm a little different than B. I need a couple different looks for Tom Brady, all right? I believe that the DBs match up well with the wide receivers. As you mentioned, none of the wide receivers for New England are going to scare you, but I need a curveball, I need a screwball, I need something else for Tom Brady to give him more looks than they did in Baltimore, because this is not Lamar Jackson.
All right, Brandon, stick around. Got to take a break. Coming up, what can the Colts do to slow down Pat Mahomes? Next on First Things First. Back here with former Pro Bowl cornerback Brandon Flowers. Patrick Mahomes is preparing for his first career playoff game as a starter. He and the Chiefs will take on the Colts at home on Saturday. And after throwing for 50 touchdowns and over 5,000 yards this season, Andy Reid thinks he's ready for the moment.
So far, I haven't seen anything that's really too big for Pat. I'm not even worried about that. He's going to get himself ready just like he does every week, and to play against a good football team. So, but I don't think he's wired the other way. And I'm not predicting anything. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm just telling you, matter of fact, how he's wired, and how he goes about his business.
Brandon, we saw Lamar Jackson take the stage last weekend. The moment was a little too big for him. It wasn't too big for Deshaun Jackson. So it Deshaun Watson, rather, excuse me. It kind of goes both ways depending on who the quarterback is. The guy that Andy Reid just described seems to be a level-headed, low-key guy who doesn't get too flustered by the moments. What do you think the key will be for this Colts defense to slow down or stop Patrick Mahomes and this Chiefs offense?
I think Patrick Mahomes falls in that Drew Brees, Tom Brady category where to stop him, you have to keep him off the field. Don't let him get in rhythm, getting back on the field, scoring points, the defense getting stops. I think you have to run the ball on offense with Andrew Luck and just be efficient going down the field, and don't let him back on the field so quick and so often. And once he gets on offense, you have to take away Tyreek Hill. That's his money guy. That's his deep ball guy, and just stop the run. If those two things don't get going, I think Andy Reid gets a little impatient. And that's when his play calling starts to, go off the script and go off the map. And that's when Kansas City can be had.
And listen, the Chiefs are the best front-running team in football. There's no question about that. You get behind against Kansas City. I know the Chargers were able to execute that late comeback, but that has not been the script. The Chiefs have been a team, if they jump out to a lead, they beat you. And they have shown the ability to come back when they've been down a couple scores, as they did against the Pats to tie it, against the Rams to take a lead. I know the Colts have the #1 defense in football since Week 7. I do not think this Colts defense is set up to slow down Patrick Mahomes. They run this Tampa 2, but if you look at the advanced numbers, what Pat Mahomes has done against zone schemes all year, he's been great against everything. He's been particularly great against defenses like the one the Colts like to run. I totally agree with you. The only way the Colts can slow down Pat Mahomes is that Pat Mahomes sitting on the sideline wearing a parka waiting for his next chance. It's a running game for the Colts. It's a time of possession game, because I do not think the Colts defense, as good as it's been, is going to keep them out of the end zone.
Yeah, I think the Colts are the worst matchup for the Chiefs because they can go ball control. They can do it different. They can run Marlon Mack, or Andrew Luck can just pick that defense apart. Now, Kansas City, man, and I played against Kansas City. I've watched you play in Kansas City. The defensive backs that they have, when they take a picture of the greatest, and they're coached by one of the greats, Emmett Thomas, he's a Hall of Famer. He's their coach in Kansas City. This group of DBs, absent of Eric Berry, will not be in y'all's picture. I mean, because for years, they have played man-to-man. They have played great defense, and we're just not going to see that. So I'm concerned about Andrew Luck. I'm concerned about that running game. Now, as far as Indy's defense, what is cover 2, all right? Cover 2 is based on we can take you out of your running game with a basic either 4-2 front or a 4-2 nickel. And if Kansas City does not run the football, this is where they will miss Kareem Hunt. And this is where if Andy loses his patience, if Patrick Mahomes plays like a younger player, loses his patience, because against a cover 2, you have to be able to run the ball, and you have to be patient enough to check the ball down. You have to go on 12 to 10 play drives, and that's what you're going to have to see in this game.
And that's your concern about Mahomes, is you've been high on Mahomes, but your concern is, and what you've verbalized to me is, is it's 3rd and 4, and you have the ability to throw it 6 yards for a first down, and he throws it 40 yards to try to go for the kill shot, right? Like,
does he have the ability to turn into Breeze and Brady and be methodical?
Yeah.
Right now, Patty Mahomes gets turned on behind the back pass and the three-pointer. But will he be methodically and just be able to bleed you like these other quarterbacks do? Well, that's 3. That's to the flat. Now, does he have that mentality? And until we see that, that will be my critique. It's not a criticism.
Right.
Until we see it in the games, and especially in the playoff games, that's very, very important to me.
And going back to what Nick said, I think cover 2 is what they want, to get Tyreek Hill one-on-one with a safety where he can run and turn.
Because they do play him in that slot.
That's exactly what they want. If you look at Andy Reid, he always had great running backs, from Brian Westbrook to Shady McCoy to Jamal Charles, Chadrick West, Spencer Ware. Then Kareem Hunt came out of nowhere. And then Damian Williams
5 yards a carry.
Exactly. So he has to run the ball to be successful. I know Patrick Mahomes can air it out, but he has to get the running game going first to air it out.
First-time quarterbacks were 0-3 last weekend. I'm just wondering, when it comes to experience, when you look at Patrick Mahomes, how much more, I guess, experience a guy like Andrew Luck is going to have more than, say, a guy like Mahomes, and if that's going to affect hey, I need to do what I need to do. I need to get 4 yards here. Maybe I don't throw it down.
Well, listen, I can speak to that. Patrick Mahomes' worst games, or the worst beginnings he's had, have been in the biggest spots. So and now they've been on the road, but where he has struggled early was the first half Monday Night Football against Denver, the first few drives in New England, the first few drives against the Rams. Those games, national TV, big spotlight games, he struggled early, then found himself late. He cannot do that in this game. Whatever the version of getting a guy a layup, to getting a guy to the free throw line, whatever that version is of have his first pass be a completion for 6 yards, that's the play they need to run, because he needs to have the success early, because I have seen nerves get to him early in games. He's settled, but we've seen that in games this year.
B. Flowers, I have one for you. Give us a little wild card, because you and I are very, very familiar with Eric Berry. Nick always talks about him coming back for this playoff. What does he add to a defense? What type of player and what type of character does he bring to the football field?
He's the emotional leader on this team, not just this defense, on this team. When he's on the field, this defense feel like they have a chance. This team feel like he have a chance. He can.
So among all them guys that they have, because Eric's a very, very quiet guy. You talking about he's got the attention of everyone in the locker room?
In the locker room. Before everybody comes before a game, they huddle around Eric Berry. Even when he was hurt, he'll still come to the games. Everybody huddle around him. He gets this team fired up and going before the game. And when he's on the back end, you know he might come up with a hard hit, a pick. He's great in the run game. So they definitely need his presence on this defense, and that can slow down Andrew Luck at least a little bit.
Why do you think a Chiefs team that usually a team that has Chris Jones, 15 sacks, D Ford, 10-plus sacks, Justin Houston, if you have 3 excellent pass rushers, maybe that's not going to make you a great defense, but you're not going to be the 31st ranked defense like the Chiefs are. Why do you think they've struggled so much defensively, despite the fact that they can get after the passer?
Because the front and the back end go hand in hand.
Yes.
If you can't cover on the outside, even though they're getting sacks, they still can be hacked. They can just throw the ball up on fade routes, get penalties, and get big plays. The defensive backs from Kansas City has to show up today to get these guys, just some time to get home and just be disruptive.
You have to believe in each other. Each level of the defense has to believe in it. That's what you see Baltimore. They don't have the best talent, but what they do, they all move in unison. The linebackers, the coverage all match up. So when you get a breakdown in coverage, what you start to see is linebackers start to freelance, and defensive line, because they got more talent, they start to freelance, and they need to have faith that every guy is going to do his job, and that's how you're able to get it done at all 3 of those levels. We haven't seen that in Kansas City, a lot like the L.A. Rams. They got great corner play.
And they got Aaron Donald up front.
Okay, but we don't see them play good defense because they all have to be married together. Back in with that intermediate part of the defense and that front line trying to give constant pressure and taking them out of the running game.
Brendan, thanks so much for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Really good stuff. Come back again.
Yeah, I'm sorry I know you, man. I'm sorry.
Great.
Cool.
I'm sorry. We have to bring you back.
Nets emerging star Spencer Dinwiddie joins us next on First Things First.
Let's do that.
Back here, First Things First. Last night, the Nets lost a tough one to the Celtics. Spencer Dinwiddie had a nice game off the bench, scoring 15 points for Brooklyn. He's averaging 17 points per game this season. And more importantly, he now joins us here this morning on First Things First.
What
Spencer,
up, man? Good to see you.
Thanks for
Greatly
being with us.
appreciate you joining us, man, too. Especially after last night and everything. You could have canceled big timers and everything.
He didn't. Hey, Spencer, do you follow the season as you're playing? Do you watch other games? Do you get a chance to see who's doing what? I mean, how much of a fan of the NBA are you while you're in the middle of a season?
Oh, a big fan. I mean, well, let me not say fan. I guess it's more kind of leisurely scouting.
Okay.
But I definitely watch League Pass every night.
Oh, do
it's one
you?
of the things. Yeah. I watch all the games. You know, it's a big part of my life, and I love doing it.
And so people should know a little bit about kind of your trajectory and your story. I would say at every point of your basketball career up until maybe 3 weeks ago, a guy that was maybe underrated. That coming out of high school, you weren't five-star recruit. At Colorado, it took some time, and then when you had finally established yourself, you hurt your knee, right? And that made you go from a guy that was going to be a first-round pick to second-round pick. You bounce around the G League a bit, a number of stints down there, and finally get a real opportunity. I would argue last year. I watched a lot of the Nets last year because I moved here. And then this year, in the argument for the best sixth man in basketball, and the Nets rewarded you. You had a great 24-hour stretch. I think you scored 39 points and then got $34 million. I'm not maybe the other way around. Tell us about the journey. Like the journey from a guy who I'm sure always wanted to play professionally, but I bet even some of your coaches at times were like, oh, you can play professionally. It'll be in Turkey. It'll be a nice living, to getting to where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, I would credit my parents with that. They never told me I couldn't do anything in my life. They believed in me from the jump, from day one. And that type of belief has been pretty much what's carried me through my career, because I've been the kid that was crazy enough to think that he was going to go to the NBA, even though he was the 150th best player in his high school class. And that confidence didn't waver. And it's what allowed me to, you know, keep pushing through barriers and walls and things as they've risen.
Yeah, now you've talked about high school not being rated that way, but it seems like in listening to you on a podcast, reading articles about you, you've always had that mindset that you were an elite talent, regardless of what people had you rated. Then you got hurt in college. You kind of switched it there that I'm supposed to be a lottery pick.
Yeah.
So even though you were going through the G League, couldn't find a spot on a roster in the Detroit with, man, they're stacked with guards. You might not ever get an opportunity. You always thought you were an elite player. And how has that transferred over to the Nets? You got a lot of guys with some similar stories. Either didn't get a chance, hurt, didn't have the type of rep. How has that led you and the Nets to be able to get this type of chemistry that has you guys in the playoff hunt?
Yeah, I think with all of us having similar stories like that, it kind of creates a bond between brothers that other teams may or may not have. All of us having gone through that fire, we all understand, you know, what it's like to kind of be an outcast or be cast aside. And we know how important it is to really come together, work together, and the power in the unit.
All right, so you did lose last night, but overall the Nets have been playing pretty well in this last stretch. You've won 6 of your last 10. Like C said, if the playoffs started today, you'd be in it right now. What do you credit to this team turning things around?
I think everybody kind of points to a players-only film session we had where Jared Dudley and DeMar Carroll were very vocal, and you know, people think it might have been an airing of grievances or something like that. It really wasn't. It was a lot more technical analysis, and you know, helped our communication as a unit. And then, you know, our organization is first class from top down. You know, Sean Marks, our GM, and Kenny Atkinson as our coach, amongst obviously our massive player development staff and assistant coaches. Just top down, it's first class, and we're finally getting to reap some of those rewards.
Anytime I hear a story about the team, somewhere along there, man, they throw Jared Dudley in there. I mean, like, so tell Huz, man, he's part of the mix. And in critical minutes, I have seen you guys put him on the floor. You guys play small, and the type of chemistry you got, and he makes big buckets and make big plays. What does he mean to that team right now?
Right now, he's like having a second coach on the floor. You know, he is the vet. You know, like DeMar Carroll's our vet as well, but
sometimes I look at his body too. I'm thinking, yeah, y'all definitely got a coach on the floor.
No. Hey, I completely understand.
Because he got a body built by Hostess Twinkie, not like Jenna Wolfe.
I'm not throwing my man under the bus. I'm not throwing my man under the bus.
You can tell him CC said it.
But yeah, no, I definitely would tell him CC said it. But you know, he's just like having another coach on the floor, and the spacing he gives us at the 4 spot, being able to shoot the 3, and just making timely buckets. I mean, he fakes the handoff in critical moments all the time and gets a layup. So, you know, he definitely helps us, and, you know, it's been a pleasure playing with him.
And this is something I think some some a lot of NBA fans, and unfortunately even some NBA teams don't understand when you're in a rebuild, which the Nets were, and now you guys are in the next stage of that, trying to be a playoff contender. But you can't just have young players. Yeah. You can't just have kids. Like Jared Dudley, so I know him a little bit as well. And if people look at the contract he has and his points per game, and they're like, wait, what? How does this make sense? But if you watch the team, they've got to have someone who not only is a coach on the floor, but when you start out 8-18 and you have a bunch of really tough, close losses to where you guys don't let go of the rope, where you guys don't say, oh, there's going to be another bad season. Because since then, you guys have reeled off 12 of 16, but one of the best teams in the league. That's the coaching, but it's also those two veteran players you were talking about.
For sure, because you got to remember, coach can prepare us, but like anything else, when you go into the test, he can't go out there and play for you. So you need your brothers to pick you up when you're not at your best, and I think that's one of the things that vets do better than anybody, regardless of the way that they may be playing that game. You know, I think young guys tend to fluctuate sometimes game to game, depending upon how they're doing individually, and vets don't waver, especially not guys like JD and DC.
More people need to hear your story. It's a remarkable story. 5 times sent to the G League. We talked about the injury. You thought you'd be a lottery pick to now you're making custom shoes. How do you go from the G League? Because I've been cut before, and I know those kind of things, they stay with you and they continue to motivate you.
It was in preschool, but he was still cut.
But
come on
now you're making your own custom shoes. What got you into that? And you got to take a tremendous amount of pride into where your life has gone.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the trajectory and where we're at now, it's definitely been a fun journey, and we feel like there's so much more to go. With the Nets, with me individually, obviously with the shoes too. The way it all came about, I used to draw shoes when I was a kid, and it was something that I did just kind of as a passion. I'm not a great artist in terms of, a full spectrum of different types, but for whatever reason, I can draw shoes. When I got back into the league out of the G League, no marquee brand wanted to sign me. And that's kind of when my mind started approaching, like, what would happen if I had my own shoe? What would happen if I took one of these drawings and brought it to life? It's actually not an easy process, and so I have to thank Project Dream, which is basically a set of tools to allow influencers to create their own brand. And they pretty much approached me. They needed somebody crazy enough to do it, and I was in a position to try it. And so I've been having a lot of fun with being able to create that and go forward.
So a lot of these, this part I didn't know. I knew they were custom shoes. A lot of these are your drawings?
So the shoe itself is my drawing. Now the individual artwork is done by a man named Picasso. He does a lot of cleats for the NFL.
I've heard of Picasso. I know
so
Picasso.
all the intricate artwork, like the Space Jam shoe, the Prince shoe, Bruce Lee, all that artwork on top of the shoe, that's all Picasso, and he's been phenomenal in what he's doing.
That's really cool, because I know some of the guys, when they don't get the elite shoe companies that want them, all of a sudden they sign with a company in China and none of us heard about that. And sometimes that's the best way to get a check. What you did, that's a really cool thing. And you're the only guy in the league doing it.
Yeah.
And congratulations, man. Congratulations to you and the team. Man, we're going to make some more games this year. Need you guys to make the playoffs. We're pulling for you on the All-Star, so if you're out there voting, fans.
Oh, yeah, I need that.
Voting into the All-Star.
Absolutely. And the last net to make an All-Star team, I'm trying to think, like, maybe
did Joe Johnson or D. Will? Maybe.
I know they did. I wonder if KG got one, like an honorary one when he was there. But you're playing like an All-Star.
Thank you.
You're playing like an All-Star and Sixth Man of the Year.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.